Last week, we made a modular storage system for farm drops. This week, I designed a warehouse to go with it. Let's take a look around. One of my primary concerns with this build was having enough space. This building is a 31 by 57 with 6 blocks of build height and another 3 blocks of clearance above that. I have two concerns with a build like this. Firstly, since we're going with the warehouse theme, it was very important to me that I was able to have believable pallets on the floor. Secondly, I wanted to have inconspicuous lighting throughout the building, but still have enough light to prevent mobs from spawning. This isn't as straightforward as it sounds, but I think I found a solution to fix both of these problems. We made the entire floor bottom half slabs. Let me explain. If you place down wood planks on the floor, it looks nothing like a pallet. However, if you use wooden slabs, anything that you place on top of them floats. With a slab floor, our planks look like a half slab, while still being able to properly hold items on them. The other side of this is that with a slab floor, mobs cannot spawn in this space, leaving us free to make aesthetic lighting choices, rather than worrying about light levels. With that said, let's look at the basic shapes that make up this building, and some of the decorative options that we have available. We'll start with a few decorations. First up is shelving. Now, I did a ton of experimenting with different blocks, and the major takeaway is that you need a non-solid top block abutted by either trapdoors or doors. In order for the shelf to work properly, stuff has to be able to rest properly on top of it, and it has to have no gaps on the sides. Doors and trapdoors are the only materials that'll do that. The only downside to doors is that you can only build the shelf one block tall because you can't stack doors on top of each other. But I think these spruce and birch shelves look really good. Next up is pallets. Now, I felt these were very important to get right. And in real life, a pallet is roughly 2 meters by 2 meters, or 2 blocks by 2 blocks, but I think we can all agree that these are way too small. So we went ahead and made them a 3 by 3, or 9 blocks total. You can pretty much put whatever you want on top of these, but essentially it'll fall into two main categories: functional and aesthetic. On the functional side of things, you have your basic storage. It's just a lot of double chests. And this looks perfectly good, it's nice and organized, and would fit right in a warehouse. On the aesthetic end, you can do things like this. It's not very practical, but you can have stacks of logs, for instance, and if you were to put rails on top and ladders on the sides, it looks like they're tied down, and that would add a lot of atmosphere to your build. Personally, I like to do both of these, but then mix the two up a little bit for something like this, where you have all of your storage, but it's not in any particular order, and it just looks good. Really, you can do whatever you want here. The possibilities are endless. Just experiment around with some blocks and find out what works for you. Next, let's look at some of the structures that make up this build. Now, any warehouse, in order to support the roof, will need poles and I-beams. In this case, our poles are made out of 7, one of them is buried, but 7 blocks of white concrete, 3 blocks of polished andesite, and our I-beam is made out of stairs, slabs, and fences in polished and regular andesite respectively, and I think that looks pretty good. The lighting that I decided to go with is meant to mimic fluorescent lights, and I achieved that with end rods, iron bars, and iron trap doors, put together like this. Our last two components are pretty simple. We have exterior lighting and dock doors. The exterior lighting is just a sea lantern with a couple of trapdoors on the outside. Ideally, I would use metal trapdoors, but since you need a redstone block in order to make those go vertical, it wasn't really practical, so I just used birch. As to the dock doors, these are an interesting thing. They're very customizable. Something like this would be closed, but if you wanted to make them look open, you could simply remove the bottom layer and add more of them up here. Or if you wanted them to be more open, you could remove another layer and add the other one up here. And what this does is it adds a sort of garage door effect. As long as it's 4 long, it's gonna look good. Now that you've seen the components of this build individually, let's take a look at how they go together. As you can see, the columns and I-beams come together to look like they actually do support the roof. I've interspersed the lighting at regular intervals in between, and it does a pretty good job of keeping the entire place well lit. Now, if you want to do this exact build, spacing is the main issue. The numbers that I used here are 6 blocks in between each of the columns on the sides, and 6 blocks out to the columns in the middle, with 15 open spaces in between. You can go as far down as you want. I decided to make 4 different units. I've also spread a couple of our decorative ideas throughout the building, some of which were out there, some of which were not, including but not limited to an entire enchanting table all the way up to level 30 spread out through a couple of different pallets. But let's take a look at what this warehouse was actually designed for, which is farm storage. Now, this is a pretty simple design, just based around a dock door coming in through the wall, and this design has a couple of flaws. There is a multi-layer sorting system out the back, which we went over in a previous video from last week, and there are some flaws to that. If you didn't get to see that video, I'll link it in the description, but this is all perfectly good so long as this doesn't fill up all the way. The other storage that I have comes in these dock doors. Now, basically what I've done here is added a shipping container out the back, and this storage will come up through a water stream from presumably some farm either over there, under the ground, wherever you want to make it. And the glass is just for illustration. You can just cover this up with planks, but I wanted you to be able to see what was going on. Now those can come up through water streams and be pushed out to wherever you want them. Specifically, I'm going to send these out to the organizational system that we set up in last week's video. Again, will be linked in the description. So now that we've looked at the inside and how that all goes together, let's take a look at the exterior. Now, this is a bit unfortunate because in real life, as well as in Minecraft, warehouses are basically just big boxes, so we need to find a way around that. I've broken those solutions into two categories, add-ons and landscaping. Most of the add-ons that we're going to be making are in order to facilitate the water streams coming in from our farms. In this case, this one would be a water stream coming from several farms with all of the sorting on the inside. You can see that right here, and I like this system, but it's only good for smaller farms. But this adds up to basically an entire different building that's just tacked onto the side of your building, but it makes the shape more interesting. The other kind that we can do here pretty easily is by adding shipping containers to the back, and there's 4 dock doors specifically for that. On the roof, you're going to want to light everything up so it doesn't turn into a mob farm, but you can add visual intrigue by adding skylights. Now the second category, landscaping, is not exactly my forte, but it's something that I've been working on. You can see we've broken up the path here a little bit and added a small garden as well as a gazebo on the outside, so that if anyone were to exit this building, they would have a nice place to stand away from all the elements. And it's just little things like that that you can add going all the way around the building and do all your own landscaping and little tips and tricks and whatnot. The last part here is lighting. You don't want the outside to be completely dark, so you gotta add some exterior lights. That's about all there is for this build. I would say that it's a pretty simple build, but it's an elegant and functional solution to all of your farm storage. And if you do decide to build something like this, all of your friends are gonna be impressed. With that said, please leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below with any improvements or commentary that you think I should make on the next video. You can find me on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'd be more than happy to see you there. If you do show up from YouTube, just leave a comment saying you came from YouTube, and say hi. I like talking to new people. Until then, I'll see you all in the next video.